So I'd like to welcome everyone and joining us. We're trying to provide some information about Missouri Southern and what's happening now. We're not on campus. And joining me today is Scott Snell, the Director of Distance Learning. Scott, thank you for being here today.
You're very welcome. Glad to be here.
All right, well, we're going to focus on this transition that we've had to go through at Missouri Southern, and your department is the key department as far as the online learning. Briefly for the audience, tell us about what kind of situation we had already in place to help make this a smoother transition as we had this occasion.
Well, so luckily, all courses, even if they were taught on ground, had a Blackboard course site, and Blackboard is our learning management system. So every semester, every course, whether it be hybrid, traditional, or online, got a Blackboard site, and all students were automatically enrolled in it, and their instructors were automatically enrolled in it. And in a lot of cases, even traditional classes, the instructors would use that Blackboard site as a document repository to collect homework, post announcements, use discussion boards, things like that. So we already had, luckily, we didn't have to take any extra steps to get all enrollments in all courses in our learning management system, Blackboard. So that was a big plus right there. And because that's been standard for 5-6 years now, a lot of our instructors were already pretty familiar with Blackboard, and a lot of our students were.
Right, because we had the structure from the Blackboard side. I understand that we have our Director of Chief Information Officer on standby here, so I'm going to let him join our meeting as well. Don is joining us, and once he comes up, Don is going to be able to tell us from the technology side, because this has been a joint effort. So Don, thank you for joining us today. We're recording this session for people to provide information. Scott Snell has just explained a little bit about how we had Blackboard in place. Missouri Southern, the structure of having the technology for being able to do this online transition. Share a little bit for everyone to understand what you had in place and how that came together.
Sorry, Judy, my audio wasn't turned on, so I missed your first few comments there. I apologize.
That's okay. Well, basically, Scott Snell just explained the Blackboard setup at Missouri Southern and how that structure was in place. On the technology side, tell us a little bit about Missouri Southern having that already set up so we can help with this online transition that we had to face. With the different structure, we had labs on campus. You currently have a lab that's available for students to use, correct?
Yes. I'm sorry, was that directed to me?
Yes, that was directed to you.
Oh, sorry. I'm still in the previous conference call state here. Yeah, we realized that we needed to isolate and focus on one of our primary labs on campus, and that was the criminal justice lab. We knew that it was important to have a lab that was close to the student community, pretty accessible as well. So we quickly kind of moved to that lab location. We also then identified what additional services did we need to identify for the student community. Many of our labs throughout the campus contain specialized software that is utilized by various departments, various student community groups. So we had to make sure that software environment, if you call it, probably a term that I've heard often the last couple of weeks, is a digital backpack. And really that digital backpack, we probably weren't prepared for, but really moved quickly to say, okay, what products, what services do we need to provide in that lab location? So that was pretty important for us, making sure that the lab was accessible to our community and open during typically hours that the community needed, the student community needed. So we've worked pretty hard to make sure that we've got the proper equipment there, the proper software in that location. We've also done some testing of Wi-Fi outside of that location, outside of that lab, and determined that we do have access to Wi-Fi if you're out in the parking lot. So one of our websites related to the COVID-19 page actually contains a parking lot view that lab in particular, and as well as other labs across the campus, where you can actually park. Let's say that you want to continue your social distancing, but you want access to the Wi-Fi. So that lab actually contains a parking lot map that will show you where Wi-Fi is most readily accessible. So we've worked pretty hard to make sure we've got the right services and products and certainly access to that lab on campus.
Right. And a lot of people assume that students all have that technical ability, but they do have to come to campus if they don't have that at their home, because you don't know where they're at now. They may not have that good internet connection at home.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think we found that's probably a lesson learned that we have found as staff and faculty have moved off campus. Probably the gap is really their accessibility, their access to internet consistently and at a speed that is conducive to doing video conferencing such as this, or interaction online with the student community. So that has been problematic. We've addressed that by providing hotspots to faculty and staff that are in need of that type of service. So we've provided those hotspots on a temporary basis to the community as well. You can also look at the website and find internet resources that are available locally that you might want to add a service or a level of, say, unlimited data to your internet provider today. And so those are being offered actually by some vendors, and we're not endorsing any specific vendor, but some of those vendors, in fact, are offering some pretty significant discounts to add that service.
Great. Well, Scott, Don mentioned the faculty side, and I know your department has been key in the faculty making this transition. They may have had Blackboard use, but now they're all online. So I know you've had some constant communication and perhaps even training somewhat with the faculty on this transition. Tell us a little bit about that, Scott.
So that's been the most encouraging and positive and interesting development throughout this whole transition. We've got a Blackboard, it's basically a Blackboard site. It's called an organization, and all faculty are enrolled in that. And when we first decided to transition to all online, I started posting kind of updates to that organization in the announcements area, and those are emailed out to all the faculty. And that kind of turned into, because some faculty would be asking questions to me or other people in the DL staff via email, and others would be, sharing what they were doing. And kind of what that turned into was kind of a running dialogue across campus. And basically what would happen is people would ask questions or share what they were doing, and I would post all those every morning to this announcement. And that's been going on now. This is week 3, and it's been great to see all the different approaches that different faculty are using, all the different software, and the sharing of ideas. And I've just really enjoyed that, and I think it's been a big benefit, and it's drawn the teaching community on campus closer.
So they're really sharing with each other, and along those lines.
They are, because on one hand you'll have, and there was a couple members of the math faculty, Jacob Clark primarily, who took it upon himself to create a website with Blackboard Collaborate tutorials. He must have worked probably a week on that. And they were very specific to, how we use Blackboard Collaborate. And Collaborate is an online meeting conference tool, very similar to this one, but it's integrated inside the Blackboard courses. And so he put up a web page and with links on all of these tutorials, and we were able to share that through this organization. And another faculty, Michael Groot from chemistry, he developed a way to hold office hours from his home office where he could draw on a pad and share that with any student that was connected to him. And he made a little video tutorial of his setup and showed how he did that. And the list just goes on and on and on. And so people took those ideas and also shared other ideas. And I can't imagine. I mean, I got positive feedback myself, but I just can't imagine the help that was that I didn't hear about. I think it's just been an invaluable kind of communication piece to this transition. Really, really positive.
It sounds like in a lot of ways on the instructional side that interaction is important for the faculty members as well. It's not, people may think of correspondence courses where you just read something and respond. You want that interaction. You want the faculty.
No, and you're exactly right. And so what a lot of teachers took different approaches. Some went to a kind of an asynchronous model, meaning normally we met at certain times. We're not going to do that anymore. I'm going to put stuff up on Blackboard. You'll get to it as you can. Others, they stuck with a synchronous model, and they used tools like this to actually hold classes during the normal classroom time. And I think in both cases, it really depended on the students in that class. I think in some cases, the students in that class, it really helped them to continue to meet at that time. Mm-hmm. Seeing their classmates via video was really, really important to them. And also it helped them maintain their schedule. With everything else being up in the air and changing constantly, it helped them to stay on top of their tasks, knowing that, well, Tuesday at this time was this class just like before. And then on the other hand, because things were so topsy-turvy, this asynchronous model implemented by other instructors was also very beneficial, giving students more flexibility because of other responsibilities that were put on them because of COVID-19. They had to change their schedules. And so it's been a very flexible and empathetic approach to the needs of the students. Faculty have been just outstanding in communicating with their students and making sure. There was probably 3-4 threads last week in this email or this announcement correspondence we had going on with, I've got a small number of students that I can't reach. Has anybody had success in reaching students that have kind of fallen off the map? And so there was a lot of concern and a lot of input and feedback and ideas on finding students and getting them what they need. So it's been really impressive, and I've learned so much, and I'm sure everyone else has too.
Right. And you mentioned trying to meet the needs of the students. That's a campus-wide effort that we're going to continue looking at on these programs. Don, from the aspect of your department, I know you've always had a help desk where people can call. That's still remaining active, isn't it, if someone has questions on the technical side of things?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Judy, for that question. The help desk actually, you can imagine, is probably more active in the last couple of weeks, although that activity has actually reduced and leveled off, which is a good thing. I think we're moving into a period of time where there is more of a routine being established, whether it's doing work from home, interacting with your colleagues and the community that you serve. But the help desk was pretty active in simply just some basic kinds of need and questions. How do I set up our virtual private network, our VPN environment, for example? And if I'm accessing this application or this system, what do I need to do? And what's the minimum requirements? So we answered a lot of questions via online. We have 3 staff that are working remotely. All of them are working remotely, and they rotate as calls come in. To both the main operations office number as well as the help desk number. And so they're responding, forwarding, following up as they normally do, but they're doing it from home. And so that's been actually a very pleasant surprise in terms of that transition that was made for that support community.
I imagine that's reassuring that people know that there's still someone on the other end of that line when they have that question, when they call in.
Yep.
Right. What about from the aspect of, we hear so much about security, cybersecurity. People are scattered everywhere now on different systems. Do you have any tips that you would want to share with faculty or students or anyone who's now working from home online as far as that whole cybersecurity concern?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. And from my perspective, security is really everybody's responsibility. And whether you're more vigilant now and looking and watching for suspicious kinds of emails coming in, phishing attacks, for example. We are seeing pandemic-related kinds of attacks that have begun to kind of surface, and those, are questionable. Oftentimes, you really have to take a look at the website that is being sent from. But we are, I think, really wanting to impress that security isn't less of a concern if you're working remotely than it is if you're on site and in the at the campus level. So you really have to take a look at those kinds of communication that is coming in. You may have heard a little bit about some of the collaborative ghosting kinds of activities that are going on in the media. We've not seen that specifically, but ghosting might be somebody that actually comes into this conference call and who wasn't invited. And those are kinds of activities that we've seen also across kind of the world. Again, we've not experienced that directly. So security, both in terms of looking at incoming information to you, is as important as ever. You may be working on a personal device, and it's important that those individuals that are maybe now using devices at home have the appropriate protection and possibly malware kinds of products that are available at the campus for those devices at home. So many took their machines home and are using those devices now on the home network. And so they most likely are protected and continue to be patched as well. But there are those devices that are being used by personal devices that are being used now for home work. So again, we've got to continue to stay vigilant in terms of watching for attacks coming forward, and really making sure that our systems are up to date with patch maintenance as well. Sometimes you might receive that if that patch maintenance function is turned on automatically. And so I don't think we can let our guard down because we're now working from home. And in fact, in some cases, we may want to really kind of be monitoring that even more intentionally as well.
Right, because when you're on campus, you feel confident perhaps they're taking care of this for me, and now it's on my shoulders and so forth. Well, Scott, from the Blackboard, the learning side, as far as resources for students, people who may be interested in, where can I find out more information? You have people in your staff as well who are acting as resources to answer those questions and help them out.
Absolutely. So DL has and I need to mention before I move to the instructional designers, I need to give a shout out to Noel Wiseman. He's our instructional multimedia coordinator. Mm-hmm. He's stayed on campus throughout this because he has a recording facility there. So for instructors that were unable to manage recording lectures or sharing video with their students, he stayed on campus and taken appointments with instructors for the duration so far, and provided a vital a bridge to that gap for many instructors that wouldn't have been able to do it without him. So a shout out to Noel Wiseman for that. Now we've got two instructional designers, Felicia Morley and Diana Fordham, and both of them are highly involved and engaged in a big number of courses and instructors, and actually give their contact information to students in these classes. And so a lot of times students will have the contact information of either one of those designers, and they kind of lend a hand to the instructor in fielding questions and navigating the courses and things like that. Also, all students are enrolled in a Blackboard organization like the faculty have, but it's called Chalk Talk. And that organization has a bunch of resources in how to use Blackboard how to use Microsoft Office, which all students get through IT, how to do things with video, answering a bunch of questions. And what Felicia did through the first week of this transition was she used Blackboard Collaborate and had live drop-in sessions for students in the evening for that whole first week, and met a lot of students that way and helped them navigate the transition. So there is that Chalk Talk organization that students can find by clicking the organization tab when they go into Blackboard. Also, in any Blackboard course, there will be a student resources link they can click. It takes them to a new web page that's got resources, tutoring resources, or I should say supplementary instructional resources, software downloads, more Blackboard tutorials, etc. Also, in any Blackboard course, there is a direct link to the Student Success Center, and students can get tutoring at a distance through Missouri Southern's Student Success Center tutoring office. There's also a link to the Spiva library directly inside any course. And so, you know, we put a lot of effort into making sure that every Blackboard course site has a lot of resources for students just a click away. Also, we need to mention Southern's COVID-19 update page that's accessible from Missouri Southern's main website, and that's got a collection of resources clearly labeled for students as well.
Well, is there any final thought that each of you would like to leave for people who are, might have questions or something that we haven't touched on today that, if someone tunes in and sees this, or they, say, is there anything else you'd like to leave them with some final thoughts? Scott, do you have anything you'd like to share with anyone?
I just want to say that everyone at Missouri Southern is fully committed to helping all students maintain success throughout this transition. And so don't be shy about contacting anyone. Any contact information you can find anywhere. Use it if you need help, and someone will respond to that and do everything possible to get you what you need so that you can successfully complete this semester. That is the #1 goal of everyone at Southern.
Okay. Don, are there any final thoughts or anything you'd also like to mention for people?
I think while we've not seen anything like this, at least in my career within IT, I think there's going to be some very positive outcomes, I believe, and lessons that I think we'll be able to better support the student community, the staff and faculty community. I think we've learned some pretty valuable areas of technology that I think are going to stick and be with us. And so I as Scott indicated, we're here to provide the support needed for the student community, for the faculty and staff community. As Judy, you mentioned, the help desk is available and accessible, and we're here to provide the necessary tools and assistance to make this semester complete and successful, as well as probably going into the summer term as well.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank both of you for being on this program today, sharing some information. As you mentioned, there are a lot of resources, a lot of ways Missouri Southern is providing services for students. So we'll continue to do these interviews with other people on campus. But thank you, Scott, and thank you, Don, for joining me today.
All right. Thank you,
Judy.
You're welcome.
Take care.
Bye.
Be safe.
You too. Thank you.